Welcome to the McIntyre Inc. podcast. I am your co-host, Brianna McIntyre, with my father, Michael McIntyre. Say hi, Michael.
Good day, good morning, good evening, good night, whatever time it is. Thank you, Brianna. That was such a great intro.
Wow.
How do you feel about the new? We're on the couch this time.
Yeah, and I wasn't warned about being on the couch.
I know, so it kind of threw you off a little bit.
It did. I actually knew it was going to happen.
Is that some of your tism maybe taking place?
Yeah. Yeah, I knew it was going to happen, but it was like I didn't prepare for certain parts of that, but that's okay.
Your mental state or your
No,
wardrobe
my
state?
wardrobe state.
I think your wardrobe looks great.
Thanks. It's fine.
All right.
So
go ahead.
today we're going to talk about a really fun topic about being fired.
You're fired.
Firing.
You're fired.
Being fired. Firing. I'm saying the same thing over and over again. Okay,
Yes.
So what do you think of when you think of the word or the terminology being fired?
Yeah, it's a weird thing, maybe we should ask chat where'd the word fired come from as far as letting somebody go.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think, I don't know, is it you're fired and then it's like, because you get all heated up and you feel you got your butt scorched and you're fired. Is that where it comes from? I don't know. I know, Donald Trump made it famous in this, his apprentice deal, you're fired. I think at one time he wanted to coin that phrase, but he didn't get a chance to. Anything to make a buck, right, Donald? Anyways, I think I got many stories about firing people. I guess one of the reason I think I got really good at it.
It's a badge of honor.
It kind of Jack Welch really kind of coached me in this. Who was former CEO of General Electric. God rest his soul. Amazing man. Anyways, if you ever want to read a great book, read Jack Welch's book, Straight from the Gut. It's excellent. I couldn't put it down. It's one of those books I just couldn't put down. So, yeah, firing somebody is I don't know if it's an art form, but I think it's something that really needs to be done in a positive way instead of negative way.
So let's go back. How were you in the early days? And for those who don't know what you have accomplished in your career and the amount of people that you have employed over your time, can you give some numbers on that?
Yes. Probably over the period in our, going all the way back to when I really dived into the insurance business and started hiring insurance agents and had an agency. It was probably 1987, 88. And it was small. We had 10, 15 people, but every now and then you'd get agents sales agents, especially insurance agents. They're lazy. And they're lazy because generally the good ones can just, go out there and make themselves $5,000-6,000 in a week.
Right.
And then you can't find them with a search warrant. They're gone,
Now, were they employee status or contract?
Contract. They were contract.
Okay. But you have dealt with, I just want to create this distinction here. You've dealt with both contract and employees firing.
Yes.
Full-time.
1099 and W-2.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah. And so one of the
what's the difference too in firing them?
Not much. I mean, I just terminate the contract, I mean, it's
well,
not much.
Okay. But with a contract, you don't have to give a reason, or both. You don't.
Well,
have
here
to
in
give
Texas, you have the right to work state, so you can fire at will, and you don't have to give a reason. And so one of the things that I was taught early on is don't give a reason.
Okay. And who taught you that?
A really good friend.
Meaning yourself?
No, I think my attorney told me that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how, in the early days, maybe before this advice or even when you got the advice, what was your firing technique at the time? Yeah.
So what would happen would generally, you could always see it coming. In sales, if the person's a really good salesperson, they're showing up, they're producing, they're making a difference, and all of a sudden it starts, dropping off. There's something wrong.
Right.
And generally, what's happening, they're out working for somebody else. And what used to piss me off is that they would be stealing my leads. So we would spend a lot of money on leads, give them leads, and then all of a sudden McIntyre, the leads suck. This is horrible.
Yeah.
And then we call back a few clients. Yeah, instead of buying, First Chance Mutual, then they bought Last Chance Mutual, right? And then like, all right, so they stole from us. So in the early days, we just terminate them and just cut them loose, and that we'd never see them again. And it wasn't a face-to-face generally. But then it got to where we got larger, and then we had staff and we had employees.
Okay.
And so when you have that, and I did learn that, coming in and giving somebody, because what happens when you sit down across from somebody, especially an employee, a W-2 employee, and you say, listen, we're going to let you go today. That's what a lot of people say, we're going to let you go. And then they want to know why. They have a strong desire to know why. And, in the early days, I would tell them why. And then, all of a sudden, then they can draw unemployment and do these other things, which sometimes I was glad they could draw unemployment. And sometimes I didn't think they deserved to draw unemployment, because as a business owner, you end up, it increases your percentage that you have to pay for unemployment insurance. So what I did learn from Jack Welch was that if you keep people working for you, employees, even contract labor, and they're not performing, you're enabling them for failure. And so it's all in the way that you present that. And so one of the ways that I learned to do it, and Jack Welch didn't teach me this, I just came up with it as they would come in and I'd say, okay, Bill, today's a great day. Really, Mr. McIntyre? What kind of day? Why is it a great day? Because you get to go do what you're good at. You're going to be able to go and find your purpose, because your purpose is not here. This is not your purpose. And I apologize for enabling you not to perform well. I want you to go out there and do well for you and your family. So today is your last day here with our agency, and we wish you the best of luck. And then I would stand up and reach out and shake their hand. 9 times out of 10, it would go fine until it sets in, because the process gets in.
I mean, that's kind of a head fake.
Yeah, but you got to set it up that way, because otherwise, and then they'll say, well, why am I being let go? And I said, because obviously your purpose is not here, because number one, you're not making the money you need to be making. Number two, you're not performing at the level you should be performing. And number three, I don't believe that you're happy. And so we're going to let you go and be happy. Now, if it's a situation, they've been there a long time, obviously we'd have a severance package for them and give them a severance package and a letter of recommendation. But if they were total jerks and they were just bad and they weren't good at their job, we would just say, we're going to part friends, okay? And we're going to not enable you any longer, and we're going to wish you the best of luck, and stand up and shake their hand. And they'll say, well, what's the reason? This is, and here's what you have to say. This was a business decision. Because it is a business. Because listen, we were not a nonprofit agency. Okay, we were for profit, and we had to make profit. And if we had a barnacle on the boat, we had to cut that barnacle loose. And so, and I know that sounds harsh, but in business, if you want to make money and you want to keep the lights on, you want to pay for the other employees and provide a place for them to make a living, then you have to trim the fat.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's I think framing things is a really powerful tool, and that's what you're essentially doing. But you're also framing it. You're like, this is, it's the reality of business. If the performance isn't there, then what's the point?
Well, especially for them.
Yeah. So did it ever make you nervous, or because you were looking at the bottom line on everything, you were just like, no, like this has to happen?
Yeah, you'd always get butterflies, especially somebody that's been there a long time and you like them, and you had you might have been out and had a drink with them, or they've been at the conventions.
There's some element of relational equity.
100%. Yeah. Maybe their family, their spouse, whatever the situation is. But the bottom line is the bottom line. And so, but look, we generally, especially with either a contract person or a W-2 person, they have a heads up. They know that, they've been on shaky ground and that they need to improve. They've been told, hey, listen, and that's one of the things we do in the C sessions, right? And that was, Jack Welch taught me that. But the main thing that Jack Welch really embodied in this and really walk home is you're hurting them by keeping them on as the deal in that situation. That doesn't mean if your company doesn't have the money to pay them, it's not their fault. It's just the company's not making it, right? And so
Right.
you're letting them go because of the company can't afford to employ them anymore.
Right.
Or the company's been bought out, or they're pivoting on a different
Mhm.
direction. That's not their fault. And that's when a severance package is if they can afford it, and or let them draw unemployment. And a good recommendation letter. But if their performance is subpar and they've been warned about this,
Yeah.
and generally on salespeople, I mean, it's a 90-day process generally.
Right. Okay. So when I'm going back to the logistics of the moment that you're firing someone.
Mhm.
Are you having someone else be in the room to witness?
Yeah, that's what my attorney said.
Okay. And who in
Just
the,
anybody, except for the homeless guy off the street. I don't
Right.
bring them in, but
Right.
the assistant, my executive assistant, or the manager or somebody.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And look, I mean, it's not pleasant, but on the same token, you've got to make it better because we're letting you go find your purpose. And I think if somebody's at your business and they're not being optimal and they're not making it and they're not producing, it's not optimal for them. And deep down, they know that.
Right.
They might not want to acknowledge that, but that is known.
Okay. So do you feel like you got a lot better at doing that process over time?
Yeah, I did. I think so. And, we had over, 20,000 insurance agents in our hierarchy, over the course of time. And you go through a lot. And my philosophy, and I used to tell my managers this because sometimes they would get attached.
Yeah.
They would get emotionally attached, right? And it's a natural thing. And so I said, and I would tell my managers, I would say, look, you always, in sales, you've got a third coming, a third going, and a third staying. And it's a constant wheel. And not everybody, including managers, are up for that.
Right.
And you'll learn that quite often,
Right.
And that's why in sales, in scaling a business like that, no matter what, if you have commission salespeople, one of your biggest expenditures is mass recruiting.
Makes sense. So, okay. So there's like these emotional boundaries that you would recommend people to have in that space. Something that I notice that you're good at is emotional boundaries with people. And because we've transitioned out of just purely a business like model of what we do, and it's business and ministry together, to me, it's 1,000 times more complicated. And so I feel like your time in business shaped you to be able to be better at understanding how to like view people properly. And like you have for you, it's like, okay, my family is number one and everything else is ancillary. I mean,
to a degree.
Okay. So explain your process because.
Well, I harken back to the first time that I had to fire somebody at the church.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you have me harken back to that?
Harken back.
Is that the right word?
Sure. Yes.
Is that not harken?
I think it is.
What does harken mean?
Harken is like, I feel like a reference to previous
experience. And let's see what harken means. So, yeah, the church, when it's funny because when I came to the church and I didn't want to be on staff, I didn't, and I turned that down twice, and finally I took it the third request, and I think I did because I don't know, I don't want to say God reached out and said, hey, take this. I never got a vocal of that, but maybe in my heart I felt it was necessary. But anyways, I think that a church is a business, and because there's money exchanged, there's people making they're paying their mortgages, people car payments, you got health insurance, and there's people on staff, etc. And I think one of the things that's a problem with some ministries is how to run it properly, especially if you got the figurehead or the head pastor or the senior pastor or the apostolic leader. They want to be entrepreneur.
Right, but it's not.
But it's not. It's a big fat not.
Please go ahead and share your church experience with firing.
Well, no, it was just I don't know. It was probably the first 2 weeks on the job, and there was an incident where one of the people that worked for the pastor, not the senior pastor, but the one underneath him, who was quite visible and very handsome. And
Very handsome.
very handsome. And anyways, there was a young lady that was working for him, and she had a thing for him. And the pastor, who was very handsome, has a family, beautiful family, a lot of children, great guy, never, ever, ever would, succumb to anything like that. So there was a problem. And so both the senior pastor and the associate pastor said, McIntyre, would you go in there and handle this problem? I said, okay, that's what I do. So I remember going in and sitting down, and it wasn't going really well.
But how did you approach it?
Well, I thought I would come in there and basically approach it the way, hey, listen, this is a great day for you.
That backfired.
And I said, this is a good day for you to go out and do something that's really good. And, she kind of looked at me, like she was shocked and dismayed. And when she saw the writing coming on the wall, she jumped up and screamed and ran through the whole church screaming. And so, that was, and so when I came out of the room, the two pastors said, hey, bro, because they were, all hipsters. They're like, hey, bro, we're family, man. This is not the way we handle family. And I thought, wait just a second. Am I being punked here? I mean,
like, you sent me in to do this.
You sent me in to do a JOB, and all of a sudden you guys are like freaking out because it didn't go exactly like, it wasn't a ticker tape parade on the way out.
Right.
So I called in somebody else, and I thought, well, maybe the whole thing is different here at a church.
I'm sure, yeah.
Maybe it's all different. So I called in somebody that's had a lot more experience in church activity than me, and that the two pastors really respected
yeah,
Big
yeah,
D.
very much so.
And so I called him up. And I said, hey, bro, here's what happened. And he says, McIntyre, you had to fire that person. That was a cancer, and that was a tumor that needed to be removed, quote unquote. And so when they found out that he gave the okay to that, then I was anointed as the chief firing officer. From that.
It's not a fun one.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's what happened in that situation, and it's a great opportunity for a lot of people to grow, and I think one of the things, people would soak a lot. It was a charismania.
Explain what soaking is in a charismatic church.
Yeah, well, they go in and they got prayer time, and they got music's playing, and so they lay on the ground and receive from the Lord, hoping gold dust or when their teeth turn gold, which is crazy. And so there was a lot of 4 hours of that. The staff is just sitting around in a Jesus trance, which I get. That's great, but somebody needs to pick up the broom and sweep instead of just soaking all day. So, we had to straighten out some time.
Yeah.
And so anyways, but getting back to the firing situation, I think one of the things that it's, and HR does a horrible job. I think HR is a big fat waste of time, in my opinion, especially with the, all the DEI stuff and all the,
it's a lot of red tape.
It's a lot of red tape. And so that's why, unless you're living, if you have to live in one of these blue states where, you got to give 25,000 reasons to fire somebody, then God help you. Move to Texas, Nashville, Florida, Wyoming. So anyways, I think one of the things is in business, if you're an entrepreneur and, I think you have to be in alignment. Right. And this is a nod to our next thing coming up and eventually at some point. But I think having as an entrepreneur, you've got to have, you do need to have compassion. Okay. And, but also you have to respect the bottom line and respect the people that are with you in that process. Now, look, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that bring in family, justifiably so, because you can trust them,
right? And
you feel comfortable with them,
right?
And even that, you might have to let some of them go sometimes, right. And that's really a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
And one of the things, before you hire family, you should always say, "Look, here's the thing. This might work. It might not work. Okay, and I want you to be open to say, hey, adios, I can't do this, right? Or as the owner, you might say, hey, this isn't working out for me and our relationship's too important to mess up or whatever. I think there needs to be clear boundaries or clear stances on what might happen before that
and you
person
plan
is
your
hired.
exit, plan the exit for,
Yeah.
or not exit, but plan how, okay, if this doesn't work out, how are we going to be?
How it goes.
Can we choose,
Yeah.
are we mature enough to choose to stay in relationship?
100%. And yeah, because listen, my brother and I, I fired him, he fired, me, I sued him, he sued me. We had TROs. It was messy for about 5 years. Really, really messy. It was very hard. It was hard on me. It was hard on him. It was hard on our whole family. And so, yeah, that makes a difference.
What has your experience been like being fired?
Really.
Or have you really had that much experience?
I really haven't.
Fired?
Mostly you can kind of smell the smoke. There's fire, so you just kind of exit. Saranara. I'm out.
Was it more like probably when you were younger and you had like random jobs?
I don't think it ever happened. I was always I hustled a lot.
Yeah.
And
okay. So you never were
no,
fired.
No, I really hadn't. I think
which makes sense because you've always been an entrepreneur.
I've had contracts terminated.
Right.
I've had in because of a contract something or whatever. But I've had that. But that was mostly for a payment dispute. I stopped paying them. So and settled it up later. But no, I've never had anybody bring me in the office and say, McIntyre, you're fired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And which, which might be a new experience.
No, I don't think it's an experience you need to have. Okay. So what do you think people's response should be in that moment? So
if they get fired?
Yeah. Like, let's say, because I've been there before. What would you tell someone who knows they're about to be fired? What to do? Because
I don't. It's. I would say it's probably it's going to be emotional for the most part. It probably will be emotional.
Yeah.
It'll be a spirit of rejection, somewhat, depending on how strong or how insecure or secure that person is. So I think I think it's one of those things where you kind of you just got kicked in, hit in the stomach, and so. Let me relax here. Let me think about this. Let me process this. I imagine it's a huge process going on. And in that moment is probably a shock, sometimes, depending on how severe that is. How dynamic. You've been there 20 years and you're getting fired, and all of a sudden now you're going to be unemployed and you got a family, you got a mortgage, yada, yada. So these things can happen. And so you got to process this stuff really fast. And I think the biggest thing I would say to somebody is don't say something that you might regret. Because I've seen people get fired, and I've fired people, and then 3 months, 6 months, 9 months later, hire them back. Okay?
Yeah.
And so because circumstances changed, right? And or what happened was I found out it wasn't really their fault for the non-performance. It was two people underneath them. Right. And so you find and you correct those things. Right. Yeah. And how I would correct it, bring them back in, depending on the individual, maybe give them a signing bonus, a $5,000 signing bonus, an apology. And here we go.
That makes sense.
Kind of cleaning up the mess.
Yeah.
But if you're going in there, and that's why I tell people, if you do get fired or if you do get your contract terminated, don't burn that bridge. Don't stand up, throw the desk over, and tell them to kiss your ass, and I'm gonna I'm gonna nuke you guys tonight, or I'm gonna torture your cat, or I'm gonna dox you, and don't do that. Or throw your coffee across the room.
So did you ever have, besides the church experience, what was your experience with people acting crazy?
I've had them start crying, very hard.
Okay,
and men, and
that's hard.
Yeah, very hard, very hard. So I didn't enjoy that moment.
No,
and I probably didn't handle it well. I was really young, and I probably didn't handle it really well. I felt for that person, but I also tried to close off my feelings.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And then I've had other people stand up and say some vulgar things to me.
Yeah.
And comment about my hair or my outfit or something.
I remember when we had one of your many call centers that you've had, and that was when I first started working for you years ago. And and I had to fire someone.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent me the nastiest message
Mm-hmm.
after. I couldn't repeat it on here. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was really bad.
Yeah.
And people
Via email or text.
text.
Yeah.
And you just it's an interesting process. Like, and I felt like I was so young and stupid and how I handled. I was like 23 years old, and I was.
Well, I'm sorry that happened. I didn't know that, or maybe I didn't.
I think you probably knew that,
Okay.
and it was okay. I mean, it's part of it. I think it was really good for me. It was good for me to not be liked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to have to like learn how to be uncomfortable in that place and not people please. But also these people, it wasn't like. It was a very strange. I mean, it wasn't a strange environment, but it wasn't like. It wasn't super deep relationally with these people or anything
Right.
like that. But
Right.
it was just like, you're not doing
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, and those those things happen, and that's where you have to guard your heart, and you've got to put up a wall,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and you have to have a boundary set in there, and I think that's why you can't get too close to those people,
Correct.
and especially in a massive situation like that. Yeah, and so once you get to the C-suite though, and you're in the C-suite, and there's generally a relationship there,
Yeah.
and that's difficult.
That's hard.
That's hard. And yeah. So, but you know what? It's part of business and it's part of life. And so, and it's, I mean, listen, it's, and it happens in non-business things, breaking up with somebody. I don't know how, I've never been dumped. So
You don't need, okay, these are things you should not be admitting on a podcast. Never been fired, never been dumped.
But
what a charmed life, Michael McIntyre.
yeah, right. And so,
but you have seen the inside of a courtroom.
yes, I have several times, and they don't redecorate either. And so, but I think but I think in those situations, whether it's a relationship or a business relationship or a personal relationship, you really need to be careful and protect your heart, and you'll know it's coming. If you don't know it's coming, you have a very big lack of self-awareness, and sometimes we go into that, denial, and it's not the river in Egypt. It's like, this isn't happening. I can't. And I've had people like, how could you not know this is happening? I mean, are you, not only are you a non-performer, but you're stupid. Because I mean, you don't see the writing on the wall. I mean, how can you?
Your
not
head's
see
in
that?
the sand.
Yeah, and and that's what I always tell people. I think one of the biggest superpowers anybody can have is self-awareness.
Yeah.
Know about your surroundings. How are you showing up? I wish that people could get a GoPro to watch themselves for a good 72 hours.
Yeah.
And just see how they show up. How's your RBF? How are you showing up to other people?
Yeah.
Are you presenting yourself well, or are you I mean, do you ever see somebody walking around with this bad look on their face? What's going on? Did your dog just get hit? Or, I mean, what's happening? No, I'm fine. Well, tell your face, because you're showing up out there in the world. And how are you showing up? And how is your self-awareness about your surroundings? How does everybody else feel when you walk into the room? Do you, when you leave the room, does it get brighter? Or when you walk in the room, do you excite the energy? Very important. And that's one of the biggest keys and the simplest keys to success. The other is perseverance through the hard times.
Random question, but it just came to mind. How, because I'm thinking of just some variety of work experiences that I've had. And there's some places where you can, I feel like the CEO, people are fake to the CEO. And or they present this like suck up, like false narrative of everything you say is great or whatever. How did you see through that, or did you see through that in people? Like, could you tell when they're being fake?
Sometimes.
No? Or did you just kind of ignore it and like not really
both?
take heed?
At first, everything you do is brilliant, right? And especially if they're cashing checks, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 a week.
And I get that.
And you're brilliant, Mr. McIntyre, and and you're so handsome, and you're so how do you do it? You're just genius, and which is none of it's true. And so you get that, but after a while, it's obvious. And so, you learn over the course of time to take that stuff with a grain of salt, but And what you really want, what most CEOs, most the people head of a company, what they want is honest feedback.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be told, hey, listen, your breath stinks. You need a breath mint really bad, bro.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm sorry to say,
Yeah.
They
want partnership.
Yeah, well, they want somebody that's going to be honest with them.
Right. And I use
not so
partnership
much partnership. I understand what you're saying.
too strongly.
Yeah, but I don't think it's partnership. I think it's respect and honest feedback. And as the CEO or the head of the company, you've got to take that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're too thin-skinned, if you say, "Oh man, my breath is bad," are you kidding me? Then you're an idiot, and you shouldn't be in that position. Right. Because you need. I think somebody needs to tell you that you don't have your pants on. The emperor does not have clothes, and you need to make sure that somebody tells the emperor that his ass is showing, and you need to cover it.
Right.
And if you don't have that person, that's a problem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And maybe I think the part of this process can be handled at hiring. So, one of the things that I always tell people when I'm hiring somebody, especially employees, W-2s, right? Executive assistants, general counsel, CFOs, whatever, during the interview process, and this might sound harsh, so hold on. I'd say, listen, Bill, Mary, after I go through the whole spiel here, I want to hear what their biggest assets are. And then I want to hear what their biggest liability is. I want to know, how do you know you're doing a good job? And, and also, what do you do for fun? What does your weekend look like? I want to know that. And then I say, okay, here's what I'm looking for. Here's the job, and I narrow it down to 3 candidates. I get down just to 3. I only want 3. Any more than that, you're confused and you can't make the decision. But I'd also tell them, look, during this interview is the nicest I'm ever going to be to you. And I say, sometimes I'll come in here in the morning and I have nothing on my mind except work, and I don't have time for niceties. Or is that what they're called, niceties? Yeah. I don't have time for good morning. How's your day? How's your dog? How's your kids? I don't care. Okay. What I care about is getting something done. And I'm going to tell you that I'm going to apologize in advance, but I'm only going to apologize one time. And so if that's going to be a problem for you, I need to know. And sometimes they would look at me like, oh my gosh, this guy's, he's ruthless.
Right.
Or he's a meanie.
Yeah.
And look, am I always like that? No. But I want them to know because sometimes stuff happens. Right. I remember during 9/11, okay, stuff was happening, right? And I remember going into the office. It was about almost 9 a.m. and it's already going on, right? The buildings are coming the buildings hadn't come down yet, but things were happening. And that was a really, really difficult day. And the staff needed some guidance from the CEO. So I came in and I was saying, let's all gather in my office. And so they all gathered in my office. And I wasn't following Jesus at the time. I didn't say a big prayer or anything. I just said, let's watch this on television. And so I did that. And I felt that they needed to hear that. Now, there's been other times when they don't know what's going on with me or a big national event that there's a lot of problems in our business. Yeah. Maybe an insurance company's canceling a contract. Maybe there was a big charge refund back, something of that nature. And I don't have time to ask people about their mornings. How was your day? How was your night? And so I just wanted them to know that, and it wasn't that I was trying to be rude, but I was being focused, because what I can do is focus. That's one thing I can really do when I get on one thing. And so I would tell them up front, listen, so, this is the nicest I'm going to be for you. And now, which isn't true. Yeah. Okay. But I wanted to let them know that, that if you can't take it, I need to know, because I need somebody that has thick skin. Yeah.
Setting an expectation.
Yeah.
And I think I've thought about that a lot over time, and even people we've worked with. And I'm like, we probably should have, like, more in recent years, that's a good expectation to set, because now that we're in like just such a family business, it's a very different environment at times. And we go in and out of business 24 hours a day. Like it's this, family conversation, business, family. And it's it's interchangeable at this point.
True.
And so sometimes when people are around us or working with us, it can probably, they may understand that, but it's also like, hey, sometimes we make tough calls and you're not going to like it. And it's not because we don't think that you're, have a valuable opinion, but this is personal for us. Like, this is our life,
Yep.
Something that you just made me think of with all of that is when there was a season where I went to work in a more corporate setting, and I look back and I don't have regrets over it. It's just more of like, I could have set myself up better. I remember there was some relationships within the office that I had with people, all great, like they were lovely people, but I remember the codependency that was there. And I remember one day I closed my office door and people thought I was really mad. And I wasn't mad, but they were like, she must be so mad or like something. And this person was a deep emotional feeler. So they would always pick up on everything that was happening in the office. And it was a lot to manage, like, and as a person to be like, hey, everything is okay. Like, there's nothing to be concerned over. I had special insight in the situation, but it was just looking back, I wish that I would have maybe not been so friendly with everyone, because it almost felt like I had to like keep that up over time, and it wasn't conducive for me giving my best. But I knew at the time that there was this element of I was learning a lot. There was not a lot of clarity on what I was doing exactly, but I knew how to be friendly to people. And so it's not like I was a personality hire necessarily.
So you were a people pleaser at the time.
I guess so.
Maybe?
Yeah. But it was more of, what did because I didn't know what I was doing, I fell back on the skill of what I did know, and that was being relational. And then I felt like it bit me in the butt later on, because I was like, I didn't, I'm doing my job or needing to do my job, needing to focus. And then people had this expectation of me and were dependent upon me to like, oh, you're not being friendly today or whatever. And I don't know. It was kind of silly.
And it's a boundary situation.
Yeah. And so it was,
you were young.
I was young. I didn't understand how to set that up.
Yeah. You got to have boundaries, and
because I was used to being able to run solo.
Right.
And appreciate the beauty of running solo and just like go do my work, put my head down, do it.
Right.
But then it's like all of a sudden I have to talk to people, and I love people. And so it was like, oh, okay, now there's people to talk to and work together. That's a little, beyond a few people. It was very different for me.
Yeah.
And
it's a learning process. And I think, and that just goes to your boundaries. I think it's a good point. You've got to have boundaries, especially if you're in a position of authority.
Yeah. And so if I were to ever go into a situation like that again, I would set myself up very differently. I would be pleasant, of course, but it would be a different story.
Right. And and that's a key. I think boundaries is a really big key in management, in running a business and running an organization. So you don't have to be ice lady or ice man. You don't have to be that.
But they don't need to know everything.
They do not.
No.
And because they need to do their stuff.
Right.
And if you respect their world and give them the tools, listen, it's all about giving people the right tools to set so they can win.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't have that mentality, you want them to, because anybody that comes to work for us or me or our business or back in the day in the insurance business, I want them to win, because if they win, we win.
Right.
Right. It's win-win situation. So, and the client wins. And so I want to give them all the tools that they need in their toolbox to win. If you're holding stuff back because of a personal situation, that's where you cross the line that's where the boundary is broken, because now you're taking on this emotionally, because, oh man, they pissed me off because they said something about my outfit.
Right.
Okay. Which is stupid, right? So you've got to not have it, and that wouldn't bother you if you didn't have some kind of relationship with that. If they didn't, you wouldn't care what they say if you had the boundary set up. And so still be good morning, good afternoon, good evening, have a great weekend, how, I hope your mother's recovering from her surgery, blah, 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 which is basic stuff, which is okay as being a human.
For sure.
But going in and going deep into that relationship, no bueno on that.
Yeah.
You've got to have the boundaries if you want to do the job and if you want them to stay focused without having to cross that line and try to please you also in an informal way or an unhealthy way. So, all right. So I hope You're Fired episode gave you some information about that. And Brianna came up with that title. And you're so good at that marketing, Brianna. You really are. You're so good at that. So anything else you want to say?
No.
Okay. So we are McIntyre Incorporated. Thank you for watching this podcast. Make sure you share it, subscribe,
and fire people well.
Empower them, and let them know. If it don't be an enabler.
Yes.
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah. I think that's the key takeaway. You don't want to enable anyone in anything, and this is really about them finding and growing into
their purpose. Right.
That's it.
That's right. All right. So remember, everybody deserves your very best presentation. God bless. Jesus is King.